Welcome back to your #1 source for cozy gaming and design content. I'm Nick, and today we're going to be checking out a product which, if your Instagram algorithm is anything like mine, is probably being absolutely shoved down your throat. This, the Papershoot camera. We'll start, as all good tech reviews do, with the specs. But before that, I want to set your expectations a little. This is a bad camera. The filmic capabilities are super not the point of this thing. And if you're expecting huge sensor sizes, or even APS-C really, quick and responsive shutter, or convenient photo previews, you're going to be sorely disappointed. The Papershoot camera, as stated by the manufacturer, is an eco-friendly, we will talk more about this later, digital camera that aspires to promote forward thinking and creativity. If you love disposable cameras for their simplicity, aesthetic, and the lack of screen or controls which allows you to live fully in the moment, but don't love the developing or added costs, you'll love the Papershoot. The sensor is 18 megapixels, nothing stunning, but better than most cheap point and shoots you could pick up at the thrift store, so fine. The focal distance is an effective 22 millimeters with an aperture of f/22. Maybe not ideal for a more professional look, but again, that's really not what we're going for here. It has a USB-C power and data transfer, and a few barely serviceable built-in filters. So straight off the bat, I think Papershoot are setting expectations pretty well. Disposable cameras are not exactly known for their quality of life features or high specs. Generally, they're a means to an end, that end being having a photo of the moment. So far, yeah, I would agree with the pitch. This thing certainly emulates the quality expected from disposable cameras, though with a much lower effective resolution, as even cheap film stocks can give you significantly higher detail than this cheap sensor. I think the main appeal, however, which is made fairly evident by the ads the company runs, is the aesthetic appeal and lifestyle which is proposed. The idea of whipping out your film camera and snapping some nice low-res photos with the option to change the film stock with your filters is on the surface great. And I personally really love the move away from all-in-one tech that we've had for the past decade or so. I personally like the idea of separating out functions that in previous years would have been really just kind of localized to an app on your phone. I like the separation it gives to different activities, and it genuinely does help keep you in the moment when taking photos because you can't be interrupted by any push notifications or anything like that, which could easily happen if you're just using your phone to take photos. So if we just look at the specs, we don't really get the whole picture. This isn't a professional or even semi-professional setup. It's a cheap little digital camera with a fixed lens that you can't really get objectively great photos with. And frankly, I think that's fine. I think a lot of times we can get caught up in chasing higher and higher numbers, especially in digital photography. However, if you ask any professional photographer who owns the highest quality gear and spends thousands on lenses, you'll likely get the same answer from pretty much all of them, and that's that it's not really about the gear. The ever-increasing photo resolutions that are made possible by the newest and best cameras and new, great sensor technology are great if you're shooting something that you need to blow up super big and retain all its detail. And if what you're focusing on for that photo is the value it has as a product. After all, if we're doing photography as a service, time is money, and anything that can save you time ultimately saves your client money, so they'll really want you to spend as little time as possible while still giving them an optimal result. But for many photographers, the vast majority of photos we take are never sold or even seen by anyone. And a lot of those are done purely for the artistic purposes intrinsic to photography instead of commercial ones. And in those cases, it's really not about megapixels or sensor size or even necessarily the end result. It's about the process and the act of capturing the moment in the way that you see it. And I would definitely argue that for people who are just getting into photography, or even people who are already into it but can't afford a whole huge setup, this is a great starting point. It allows you to focus more on the creative aspects instead of getting bogged down with all the more technical bits. And while I do have my complaints, and we will get to that soon, I think on the whole, this is actually a really solid little camera, especially if you just want to take it with you out on the town or whip it out to take a few pictures of your friends. It's small and slim and very compact. And for its use case, that's key. In that future I was talking about, where every function is its own thing, you really need everything to be as compact and pocketable as possible, so you're not feeling like you're lugging around loads of tech just to get through your day. The paper chute is great from that standpoint. It slips into your pocket fairly easily, and even easier into a bag. And while I do admire their attempt at a more sustainable camera with paper housings, the rest of the camera is anything but. Electronics are notoriously bad for the environment, and just wrapping some paper around it, while definitely better than plastic, doesn't really solve that problem. And this is where we get to. There's a lot to love about this little camera. It's stylish, minimal, and functional. It does what it says it will. It takes photos, and generally speaking, they don't require too much, if any, editing before you can post them to wherever you're going to post your photos. But I do think it fails overall. Yes, it's small, and yes, it takes photos, and sure, the design kind of gives the aesthetic of film photography. But I don't know about you, but I don't love film photography for the aesthetic alone. I love the process, I love the tactile nature, and I love the way that the results look and feel. And while generally speaking, I think they did a pretty good job with the look aspect, I think the experience and results fall a bit flat. One of the first things you'll notice when you use this camera is the shutter button. For one, it's on the front face of the camera, which I can't understand for the life of me. If you're looking to emulate the film experience, I do think that a top-mounted shutter button is kind of key. Another thing that kind of bothers me is the lag between when you press the shutter button and when a photo is actually taken. This lag, I have to think, is programmed in, and I fully cannot understand why they would make this choice. It's present on both iterations of their camera, so it's clearly intentional, but I have absolutely no idea why. But neither of those are really my main complaints or my main problems with this as a product. No, that lies in the viewfinder. This viewfinder is entirely useless, as the lens is a 22mm equivalent that's going to be much wider than what you see out of a little cardboard cutout. And from a product design standpoint, this is just setting the user up for disappointment, especially with the low resolution that makes it effectively impossible, or at the very least, a poor choice to crop after the fact. I really think that they should just not include this at all. See, there's this tool that we use in product design called affordance, though it's kind of being segmented into signifiers and affordances, but regardless of what you call it, the concept is the same. Think of a door. How do you know how you're supposed to open the door? To you, it's probably just intuitive, and you don't really think about it all that much, until you push on a door that you were supposed to pull, or vice versa. I'm not going to get too into the weeds here, but the general concept is that all products have intrinsic properties which tell us how they should be used. Take that door, for example. If you push on it, it's likely because the handle was rather ambiguous about how it's supposed to be used. And that led you to have to make a 50-50 choice between your two options. It's the same with the viewfinder. By including a hole that we all read as a viewfinder, the designers are telling us to look through that hole to frame up our shot. The viewfinder affords being looked through, and it signifies to you, the user, this is where you look through to see how your photo will turn out. However, because the lens is so wide, you capture a whole lot of the scene that you didn't want to. This would arguably be fine on a camera with a higher resolution, because you could just kind of crop in and the photo would, in most cases, be just as detailed and the overall quality would be unaffected. But with a sensor with this low of a resolution, that's really just not possible. Because the photo gets blurry and low res, and it's really just hard to focus on any of the creative decisions being made. So by including this false signifier, the designers are setting the user up for failure. You think that you're taking this photo, when in reality, you're taking this photo. Two completely different shots. It takes the control out of the user's hands. And if you go out not thinking about this factor, you're going to end up with a bunch of photos that you're not happy with. And for a product that's all about not having to think too much about the technical aspects, this asks you to think about focal length, framing, and composition, only in your head without being able to see what you're actually shooting. Even the first cameras ever made allowed you to see what your frame was going to look like before you actually took the photo. Frankly, I think this is unacceptable, especially because it would have been just as simple as removing this cutout to fix the issue. But to be clear, I don't like it for its results, or for any of its functions. I like it because it's open. They essentially just ship you a PCB with the capability of taking photos, and adding some cool filters to it. And that's amazing from a tinkerer's standpoint. The fact that the design is so simple makes it incredibly easy to design and make your own housings for this thing. I love tech that lets you mess with it, and this is like the platonic ideal of that. There are limitless possibilities with where you could take this thing from a design standpoint, and I will be making a video about where I take it, so stay tuned for that, because I think that's going to be really fun. But ultimately, I think this is a genuinely fun little camera, and as long as you don't care too much about the resolution of your photos, it's more than adequate for capturing the moment. And after all, when you're looking back at photos of you and your friends, you're not looking for impeccable composition or incredibly high resolutions, you're looking for story and memories. All things you can capture with an absolute potato. And from a tech standpoint, that's exactly what this is, a potato. But importantly, I think it has the potential to be great. And in future iterations, I think it could be vastly improved by adding a slightly higher resolution sensor, removing the lag from the shutter button, and giving more options in the actual form factor of the housing instead of them all just being this same kind of flat rectangle design. Oh, and also getting rid of this damn viewfinder, or at least making it functional. But what do you all think? Are you interested in this thing? Do you think you're going to pick one up and give it a try? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.